Welcome to Season 1 of the PMO Community Podcast series. I'm Aina Alive, and today we are thrilled to have Demi Anderson, an accomplished strategic and enterprise PMO leader. Demi has over a decade of experience working with organizations to transform their PMO operations from administrative entities into strategic business partners. She has a proven track record in delivering higher profits, improved cash flow, and stakeholder value by aligning project management initiatives with organizational strategy. Demi's passion for driving project success shines through her approach to creating high-value PMOs that boost ROI, complete more projects with the same resources, and reduce project cycle times. As a director of the PMO Advantage and a judging committee member at PMO Global Alliance, she is known for making impactful changes that lead to measurable business outcomes. And in today's episode, we will dive into how Demi redefines traditional PMOs into true strategic drivers, aligning PMOs with organizational strategy, steps leaders can take to ensure their initiatives have a long-term impact, the rise of a new role, Chief Project Officer, and how this role differs from traditional project management leadership, fostering innovation and a growth mindset within PMOs to stay competitive, and how to cultivate continuous improvement and adaptability in project management teams. We will also explore her strategies for overcoming resistance to change, how risk management can be used as a strategic tool, and the future trends shaping PMOs in the next 5 years. Stay tuned as Demi shares her wealth of knowledge, practical advice, real-world examples to inspire PMO leaders to drive greater organizational success. Hi, Demi. Thank you for joining the podcast.
Hi, Aina. Thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with esteemed professional industry leaders and contribute to this inspiring upcoming book.
Thank you, Demi. I am so much inspired as well. And we spoke with Demi before started the recording. So there are already so many ideas and knowledge is flying in the air. So I'm excited to jump into the question about the evolution PMO. And Demi, you refer to PMOs evolving from being purely administrative entities to strategic business partners. Can you share a specific example of how a PMO you worked with successfully made this transformation and what key steps were involved there?
Thank you, Aina, for the question. I want to actually start by, first of all, defining what we mean, what a PMO is, what is its intended purpose. And I think we need to establish a common language within the industry and a common understanding, because it ensures the businesses can clearly identify their needs and the skills or services required to meet them. So it's important to be clear on our definitions of a PMO, because as we all know, the P in the PMO acronym can stand for either project, program, or portfolio management office. And of course, the P can also be product management office. We don't have product management offices, but products are also delivered as part of a portfolio of work. Now, there's a lot of different names that are often given to PMOs, like as though there's some new revelations. We see PMOs are also being called transformation management offices or value management offices, and we've got agile management office. But regardless of what name they're given, the fundamental principles still apply. There are different, as we've just seen, there are different types of PMOs, and they can exist in every part of the organization. Similar to businesses, PMOs can come in all sizes and structures. The important distinction to be clear on it and to make is whether you are seeking a PMO that is a project management office, a program management office, or a portfolio management office. So And you can have PMOs operating at that enterprise level, which is the portfolio management offices, or at supporting a program and projects. So initiative-led PMOs. And it's important to be clear on that because that determines the demand on the PMOs and the services that they're going to be providing to meet those demands. There's also, Axelos has also got the concept of a center of excellence as well, just as a side note, which is often about having consistent ways of working and best practices and all that sort of stuff. But many PMOs often deal with having setting up best practices and consistent ways of working. Now, PMOs can be either a permanent structure and they can be provided, or temporary structure. They can be provided in-house or they can be provided by a third party. It's less about making that transition from a traditional PMO, whatever we are referring to as a traditional PMO. And I think traditionally PMOs were just thought to be project management office. Portfolio management offices were not as common. They are beginning to emerge as a necessary office and function because they operate at that enterprise level. They look at the portfolio, take a holistic view of the organization's investment in spend, and are able to take that holistic approach in how to best allocate finite resources. And every organization will have its constraints, will have its bottlenecks, will have finite resources, and quite often have a greater amount of goals, ideas, objectives that they need to meet than they have the capacity to be able to meet those. So the portfolio management office operates at that level to allow informed decision and being able to select the right mix of initiatives that will be able to meet those objectives and be able to maximize the return on their investment spend and get best results. Now, a project management office, just because it's operating at that project program level, does not mean it doesn't add value. It'll have its suite of demands on it. It is often a temporary structure as opposed to a permanent structure. That doesn't mean it's failed. It doesn't mean it doesn't add value. So it's important to be clear about our language because it helps the businesses understand the services that they would require to meet their needs. And quite often it's not about transitioning what we're referring to as a traditional PMO, which often, because there are many, many PMOs at a project management level, transitioning them to a portfolio management office. There are different competencies, different skills, different requirements.
I love the distinction, Jamie, and I also like that you mentioned the Center of Excellence. And in addition to Center of Excellences, we have nowadays a VMO, like Value Management Office, or VRO, Value Realization Office. So from my perspective, to provide value, we need to understand what we are focusing on. And I believe that PMOs can successfully manage this value realization or being excellent or whatever else we call them. And now having this distinction, are we providing value to projects, or are we providing value to portfolios or the executive level? It's already like setting up a level expectation, then kind of we can divide and define a value we are going to provide.
That's right. And on that topic of value, because value can be a subjective term, often perhaps overused. Unless value is clearly defined up front, then you can't possibly be measuring your benefits and your progress towards that, and being able to understand whether the investment is going to deliver value. So it's so important to define it, and because value can mean different things. There are tangible values, and then there are intangible values. So the only way you can be clear about whether something is delivering value is by first clearly defining what value means to the organization.
Absolutely. And I think like delivering value is also means aligning with organizational strategy. So, Demi, what are some practical steps PMO leaders can take to ensure the initiatives align with long-term organizational goals? And can you share like any example of that?
So absolutely, because the principle is, the theory is, initiatives, if they're not aligning with organizational goals, then essentially it could be waste. It is waste, or pet projects, or a whole lot of other things that are not where the organization, the direction the organization wants to take. So most organizations, all organizations, will have a process, a planning process to define their strategic goals for the year. Now, that could be happening annually, it could be happening more frequently. And the recommendation is that it ought to be happening more frequently. It's fine to do an annual planning process, but that is not a set and forget approach. It ought to be reviewed at a minimum every quarter. So a PMO operating at that enterprise level, at that portfolio level, ought to be involved in that process, because if an organization has set out its goals, its strategic objectives, unless it is factoring in its capacity and capabilities to execute on that, then not only is it an execution failure, it's a strategic failure. Right? So that's where an enterprise PMO is an integral partner to that process, because there needs to, in that formulation process, there needs to be an assessment of the organization's capacity and capability to execute. So at the project management office level, it's ensuring that the initiatives, all initiatives within the program of work and the projects are aligned with those strategic goals, are ensuring that they're tracking with the organization's objectives, and there aren't distractions, there aren't deviations, and being able to have that alignment throughout the whole change programs and projects.
And I think aligning with the strategy and also going with specific steps, it's very important to have a seat on the table to push this idea to the executive. And that is the silver line of our book about the changing of PMO and raising of a new role as a chief project officer. So, Demi, the chief project officer role is rising in prominence. And what differentiates a chief project officer from traditional project management leaders? And how can CPOs influence the high-level strategic decisions in an organization?
Well, a chief project officer, in addition to having the skills, the competencies for successfully implementing change, they also need to be able to communicate with execs, with senior leaders, and be aligned with their strategic thinking, and be able to speak their language, because that's what it comes down to. So there needs to be that business acumen, and there needs to be financial literacy at a minimum, because that's what's important to execs. That's what's important to upper management.
And I think resistance to change is a big part of this process. And overcoming resistance to change is one of the part of the role of a chief project officer. So, can you share a time when you faced resistance to change to a significant PMO transformation and how you successfully navigated that resistance?
Resistance to change is a common challenge. I think any change or project, portfolio professional will face. It is a fairly universal challenge, and the best way to address change is resistance to change is understanding that there are various motivations, various drivers for why you will encounter that resistance to change. Having engagement of all the stakeholders is key. Getting key resources involved to assist with that, introducing and implementing change in the organization. So communication. It doesn't end there. And there are, various ways in which change and communicating that change could be done. At the end of the day, change is led from the top. So there must be that executive support and that executive sponsorship in order for change to be embedded in the organization. There are various ways to ensure that there is training, coaching, engaging with various stakeholders and involving them in the process, whether it's through working groups, whether it's through champions, and continuing to, familiarize the organization with what's coming and ensuring that they are provided with the relevant training, the relevant skills. And often change also means capability uplift. So that needs to be addressed because that's what it's all about quite often. Changing, developing the capabilities of the organization. So that needs to be met and ensure that the organization is brought along on the journey.
Thank you for tuning in to the PMO Community Podcast series for this enlightening discussion with Demi Anderson. A special thanks to our volunteers at the PMO Community Podcast for making this episode possible. Stay tuned for more captivating insights and interviews in our upcoming episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated. If you find this episode valuable, please remember to like and share it. Feel free to reach out to me, Aina Alive, on LinkedIn with any questions or requests. And for all of the latest updates, make sure to follow us on our social media, such as the PMO Community LinkedIn page, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Samsung, and Amazon Music. See you next time.